After World War II, we saw the introduction of a movement called absurdism. This was a response basically to the world, the impact of the two wars. Uh, um, Artists felt that the world, as a result of this, had become absurd. And for that reason, theater, art, should reflect that absurdity, that absurd existence that we are experiencing in the world. The playwright Samuel Beckett brought us what is probably the most well known absurdist play, and that is Waiting for Godot. There are other playwrights, Eugene Ionesco, for one, who gave us The Bald Soprano and Rhinoceros. This is an Italian playwright who also created absurdist plays or wrote absurdist plays. Another movement that was uh, demonstrated in the work of a philosopher and playwright by the name of Jean-Paul Sartre is something called existentialism. In his play, No Exit, Jean-Paul Sartre explores the reason for our existence, why we find ourselves in the circumstances or the situations that we happen to be in. When we talk about no exit, one sentence comes to mind, and that is hell is other people. In No Exit, we have three characters who find themselves locked in a room for eternity. That is hell. And these are people who have nothing in common. As a matter of fact, are probably the most opposed to one another's thinking and ways of life. Hell is other people. Existentialist theater brought to you by Jean Paul Sartre, post World War II. Now, in this country after World War II, of course, this was a period of excitement, feeling good, prosperity. This was the beginning of the baby boom generation at a time when the American musical was extremely popular. American musicals brought people to Broadway, bringing more money to Broadway. Broadway became very, very big, of course. But not everyone could afford to get to New York, and Broadway productions were really expensive. It took money to create these works. And the US government was not providing any support for theater at this time. So other sources of funding had to be found. Two women, um, um, actually one woman in particular, a woman by the name of Margot Jones, who had just directed a production of Tennessee Williams' The Glass Menagerie on Broadway and had attained a level of success, decided that she wanted to open a theater away from New York, all the way in Dallas. She called it Theater 47 in 1945. And this was the first regional theater. She did it by raising money from private sources, people who had established foundations, trusts, endowments that were designed or intended to support the arts and other efforts across the country to promote the quality of life, to enhance the quality of life. Other theaters, other regional theaters popped up across the country. These were what are known as nonprofit theaters now. These are theaters that rely on funding from other sources. But at that time, it was an opportunity to provide theater in different areas of the country other than the theater center, which for us in this country is New York City and Broadway. Even in the city of New York, the cost of producing theater caused um, a movement or an effort to create smaller theaters within the city of New York to provide a home or an opportunity for these wonderful plays to be presented to the public. This is where we get the distinction of Broadway, off Broadway, and off Broadway, starting at the smallest. All of these distinctions have to do with the number of seats in the house, in the theater. So once again, starting with the smallest, off Broadway. An off Broadway theater can have up to 99 seats in the house. An off Broadway theater has up to 499 seats in the house. Broadway theaters have above 499 seats in the house. So these distinctions have to do with the number of seats that are actually in the theater. One off Broadway theater has to be mentioned when we talk about them, and that is La Mama. La Mama is an off Broadway theater that was founded in the 1960s by Ellen Stewart. And Ellen Stewart's mission was to provide a space, a center, a theater for international artists, international theater artists to come to New York to share their work and to perform for New York audiences. And she was successful in doing it. La Mama is still going strong and serving international artists to this day. One interesting thing about La Mama is that the musical Hair got its start at La Mama, at this small off Broadway theater in the East Village in New York City. It gained momentum, it became more and more popular, and before long, it was on Broadway. It was a Broadway play, starting at La Mama and working its way up to a full Broadway production. We are now in the middle of the 20th century. This is a time when the Vietnam War, the civil rights movement, everything was influencing society. And as a result, influencing art and theater. Um, this was a period of protest, rebellion, um, and theater became anarchy. Theater became an anarchistic art form. It was an opportunity for people to rebel and to speak out. One theater group was called the Living Theater. And the Living Theater practice theater anarchy. Their most popular production, which I will share with you, is a production called Paradise Now. The members of this group were wild. During performances, they preferred to perform in the nude. Smoking marijuana was something that was incorporated into the performance. They burned money because they were extremely anti capitalist. They were anti Vietnam. They were anti America in a lot of ways. They angered people. Theater, this to the uh, conventional theater goer was not theater. This was not something that they wanted to spend their money on. However, it made an impact. It had a very big impact. At this time, as a result of the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, Black nationalism, a group of Black playwrights emerged who wrote some, for the time, extremely controversial plays, powerful plays, speaking to the impact of oppression and racism. One playwright in particular was a man by the name of Amiri Baraka. Amiri Baraka wrote several plays. Probably his most famous was a play called Dutchman. Uh, a version of the play is available on YouTube. I highly recommend it. If you have any interest in watching it, please do. Another playwright that has to be mentioned is Lorraine Hansberry, African American woman who gave us the play A Raisin in the Sun. The title of the play comes from a poem by the Harlem Renaissance poet Langston Hughes, What Happens to a Dream Deferred, saying that it could just crust over like a raisin in the sun. When a dream is forgotten or abandoned, that is what happens. A Raisin in the Sun is a play about the American dream, only the American dream as it relates to an African American family living in um, Chicago, on the west side of Chicago or south side of Chicago, in one apartment building. We have the mother, her son, his wife, their 9-year-old son, and also the daughter, the sister of the man who's living there. They're all living in what is probably a one-bedroom apartment, maybe two. But it is cramped, it's small, and their dream is to get out of this situation and find a house somewhere in a nice neighborhood in the suburbs where the little boy will have an opportunity to play football in the backyard. Everything that Americans dream of. Only this is from the perspective of a Black family at that time. Another African American playwright that we have to mention is August Wilson. August Wilson wrote a play for every decade of the 20th century that expresses or shares the lives of African Americans, the African American experience in this country during the 20th century. It is sometimes called his century cycle or his 10 play cycle, but a play for every decade of the 20th century. Celebrated playwright, won several Pulitzers for his work. Um, Probably his most famous play that was made into a movie, directed by Denzel Washington and starring Denzel Washington and Viola Davis, was the play Fences. Another adaptation of one of his plays, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, appeared on Netflix a few years ago, and it featured um, uh, some very popular actors, one of which was Viola Davis in the title role. And a new actor, not a new actor, but someone we're seeing a lot of lately, is a man by the name of Coleman Domingo. And also in this production is some amazing work from the late Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther. His work in this production of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is so good, it will give you goosebumps. Just amazing, amazing um, production directed by a man named George C. Wolfe. Other African American playwrights that we have to mention, Lynn Nottage, uh, um, a young man by the name of Michael C. Jackson, several years ago wrote a play called A Strange Loop that won the Pulitzer for drama. This young man, these theater artists are um, paving a way for themselves, creating an atmosphere for young African American theater artists. It's also important that we mention the work of LGBTQ playwrights. One playwright in particular is a man by the name of Tony Kushner. In the 1980s, early 90s, Tony Kushner gave us a play called Angels in America that addresses the AIDS crisis and the impact that it has not just on the community of gay men, but the world, the impact, the universal impact of this disease. It is an extremely powerful Pulitzer Prize winning drama that certainly inspired a lot of thought, conversation, and the writing of other plays. Um, Other playwrights that we should mention, female playwrights like Paula Vogel, who gave us How I Learned to Drive. Um, just contributions of uh, women, African Americans, LGBTQ playwrights. The world of theater is, excuse me, sorry about that. The world of theater is diverse, if nothing else. This is going to bring us to the end of the lecture. I will share more information with you later today. Please email me with any questions. I'm sorry.